So please join me in welcoming back our guests. First of all, Pedro Almodóvar. And of course, we also have the two actors. First, Milena Smit. And Penélope Cruz. And we have to interpret for, if needed, we have Carla Marcantonio to interpret as well. You want to maybe Carla should sit there. Carla's next. Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. You cannot imagine the experience of just listening to you, watching to you from that side. Oh, I mean, I hope you can experience one time in your life. So start directing movies and being in the festival. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you to all of you. I'm going to just start with a few questions. First for Pedro, I think it's really striking in this film how there is this story about the mothers, but then there is also this very strong, very urgent political element that frames the film. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how these two came together for you in this film.
Yeah, of course, I mean, I needed, as a writer, to make a link between the contemporary mother, in this case, Janis, and the past of Spain, because the kind of women of maternities that the mothers that I saw in the movie, they are very contemporary, and you know what? In this case, where I create the character that doesn't appear, but she talks about that, about the grandmother. She was an orphan. Also a single mother, and she was raised by the grandmother. And the grandmother was 10 years old when the fascist came to her place, to the dinner, and just pick up his father. So, I mean, she was raised, she was educated in that memory. And also she received that legacy from the grandmother, and that was the best way to create a link between the past and the present. And also, I mean, it's the same link that many people in Spain feel, because, I mean, which is incredible, is that now this is the generation of the great grandsons, the people that are asking to open the mass graves. So it was necessary, I mean, to have a generation that was born during the democracy of Spain, because before, you know, in the families, no one speak about the war. I mean, it was a silence that took all the 40 years of the dictatorship. And it was a pathological silence, because they were afraid. And, you know, that kind of fear was till the very last minute when Franco dies. So for that reason, it's so urgent, just for once, I mean, just to open the mass graves. Because, I mean, after this generation of great grandsons and daughters, that will be very far from, I mean, even for to make an analysis or ADN, pero bueno, hablo en español, son las generaciones actuales, los bisnietos, los que están empeñados en que se haga justicia y se busquen los restos de sus bisabuelos.
So yes, currently it's the great-grandchildren who are so invested in bringing justice and finding their great-grandparents.
En el 2013 o 2014 fueron a España unos relatores de la ONU para investigar esta situación que es muy anómala.
So in 2003-2014, there were some rapporteurs from the UN that came to Spain specifically to investigate this very anomalous situation.
Y lo que dijeron era que estaban sorprendidos de la mala relación que tenía el español con su historia, con su pasado inmediato.
And one of the things that they remarked upon was that they were very surprised to see what a bad relationship the current-day Spaniards had with their past.
And is that true? Es verdad, era un modo elegante de decir la mala relación, pero de hecho, ahora el gobierno actual ha elaborado una ley que contempla la exhumación como una obligación del Estado y de la Administración.
But nowadays, the government has just passed a law that actually requires for the state itself to be invested in the exhumation of the mass graves.
Entonces, a partir de ahora, las cosas van a cambiar, afortunadamente.
So from now on, things will change, fortunately.
En cualquier caso, siempre la derecha está muy furiosa contra esta ley porque dicen que esto abre viejas heridas, pero es una cuestión de humanidad. Quiero decir, los familiares lo único que quieren es tener un lugar donde poder rezar por sus abuelos, por sus familiares y un lugar donde llevar flores. Es una cuestión meramente humanitaria.
Nonetheless, the far right is quite upset about these developments because they argue that it's going to open old wounds. But really, it's not really about anything that's ideological. It's about just a very human right that people have to be able to then bring flowers, place a tombstone and bring flowers to the relatives and pay homage to them.
Thank you for that. Penelope and Milena, I was wondering if you wanted to, add your perspectives on this chapter of Spanish history, and what you think this film, how you think this film might sort of open up a conversation about it.
I'm very happy that it's a subject that will travel even more now because of what Pedro did in this film, and actually. I have something in common with the character in the way of which she heard from the. I was not raised by my grandmother, but I was very close to her, to both of them, and one of them lost her father that way. So when I read the script and I remember all those conversations that were not very long conversations, not details about what happened. It was always like, no, we were having dinner and then he was gone. So I actually had that in common with her. It's what Pedro is saying, is about human rights, like basic rights, dignity, process that everyone deserves. It goes beyond any political debate or whatever side you are. It's asking for minimum amount of dignity that any human being in this world deserves. So.
Yo cuando leí este guión era una de esas personas, al igual que Ana, que desconocía esta información. Por eso creo que esta película es tan importante y este mensaje para todas las personas de mi generación.
So when I read the script, I actually was one of those people like Ana who didn't really know much about this history. So I think it is particularly important for people of my generation to see this film.
Sí, de alguna forma creo que tenemos muchísima desinformación y creo que como sociedad debemos hacernos cargo de saber qué es lo que ha estado pasando en nuestro país y de todas las injusticias que se han cometido para poder crear una sociedad en un futuro mejor.
And so I think we live in a society with a lot of disinformation, and I do think that it rests upon our generation to become informed, to learn more about this, such that we can integrate this history into our future.
And to close the history, and just to close the worst part of our history, because now, I mean, it's still open. This is the only way just to close it.
So, to change subject a little bit, Pedro, you spoke very beautifully when you introduced the film about your relationship with Penelope over the years, working on 7 films together, all the way since Live Flesh. I think I'd like to hear, Penelope, your perspective on this working relationship that spans more than 20 years now. And I think I'd also like to hear you both talk about the idea of mothers. This is not your first film with mother in the title. This is not the first mother you've played in Pedro's films. I think we can think of many. So I was wondering if you can talk a bit about this.
So my relationship with him, it's always been really special because before I met him, I would go to the area where he lived and look at the balcony and think, someday I will find you. A little psycho, but anyway, I was lucky enough that after I did my 2 first films, I got a phone call, and my family was telling me, no, Pedro is on the phone. I was like, yeah, right. I know, but Pedro is really on the phone for you. And that day really marked my life because it was like a specific dream that came true. And then we got together. He told me, you're too young for this movie, but I will write you another one. And he was not lying, no? He's done that many times for me, fortunately. But then we got together for Live Flesh, and from the beginning it was a great connection, like great understanding. We just connected, and it's just a relationship that keeps growing, evolving. It's not somebody I work with, it's part of my family. And I just enjoy every second I spend with him. He's my master, my teacher, my friend. I'm so grateful that somebody that has influenced my life. You know, when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an actress mainly because of his movies, no? Mainly because I wanted to be able to maybe someday work with him. And I also was always thinking, why is this man not the president of our country? When I was like 10 years old, it was so much more than a director, because his speech, no, his freedom, his mind, it was not normal to see a lot of people like that, and it was such a breath of fresh air. And I don't know, it is so important for me in every single way in my life. I talk like if he was not here, no?
No, I'm trying. I'm trying to figure out that I'm not here because I'm very shy. It's very difficult to listen to this.
Do you want to talk about mothers, either of you? Mothers.
Yeah, you know that always, even that Penelope was always very young for me. I mean, for the character that I was writing at the moment. And he was even very young when we started in Live Flesh. But anyway, we wanted desperately to work together. And since the beginning, I don't know why, I mean, that always I look at her like a mother. Not like my mother, but like a mother. Like the figure of a Spanish mother. Of a contemporary mother. Because the mother of the Spanish cinema, I mean, in the past, in the 60s and 70s, they used to be not desirable women. They were usually a little fat. I mean, they cook, they take care of the children, but they were not like in the Italian cinema, women that they were, I mean, just women, desirable by men. So since the beginning, for me, Penelope represented this kind of triumph of being a female that is also a mother. I mean, I was always thinking about the Italian maggioratas like Sofia Loren and Anna Magnani, that you could see then like really very, I mean, incredible mothers with an incredible strength, but at the same time, beautiful, very beautiful. So since Penélope appearance in my movies, I can say that in the Spanish cinema, we can see mothers that they are also very desirable. And also I think I was very influenced about the memory of my own mother, because the things she does, for example, in Volver, and that is a force of nature. I mean, they can fight against everything. This is, and without prejudices. This is the memory that I have of my mother and of the generation of my mother, that they were very strong. They had to fight in one country that was very poor, that it was because the post-war in Spain last like 25 years. I mean, till 1965, we still live in the post-war. So it was because it strengthened women that the country, el país pudo superar una etapa tan dura como la posguerra.
So it was thanks to these women that the country was able to overcome such a hard period as the post-war era was.
Y para mí Penélope tiene esa capacidad física, y que va más allá de lo físico, de ser una madre omnipotente, o sea, que puede ante cualquier problema.
And so for me, Penelope has this sort of physical strength, this omnipotence almost, that she can fight against anything.
En esta película sí que, también por una cuestión de cambiar de personaje, aquí le he dado una mayor complicación.
So in this particular film, in order to sort of switch things up a bit, I've given her an extra complication.
Porque aunque las madres en general tienen un gran complejo de culpa, porque se creen culpables de cualquier cosa que le pasa a los hijos, en este caso la culpabilidad de ella es mucho mayor.
So even though mothers do suffer from guilt complexes because they feel responsible for anything that happens to their children, in this particular case, this situation, this complex is much bigger for her.
Y era muy difícil de interpretar porque todo el tiempo está ocultando algo. O sea, reacciona a lo que le dice Ana, pero dentro de sí ella está pensando otra cosa y está disimulando todo el tiempo. Y era muy difícil para una actriz como Penélope, que es muy visceral, estar todo el tiempo conteniendo esa especie de culpabilidad y de vergüenza que siente.
And it was a very difficult role to interpret because she's constantly behaving one way and feeling another way. So she's constantly acting in this contradiction, and it was particularly difficult for Penelope because she's a very visceral actress and she had to contain so much of her feeling.
Entonces lo solucionamos a base de trabajo. Ensayamos mucho tiempo. Ensayamos muchas semanas con las dos toda la película porque da la sensación probablemente de que son dos papeles escritos para ellas, pero son dos papeles increíblemente complejos y difíciles de actuar.
So we dealt with this complexity by rehearsing. We rehearsed a lot because even though it seems like that the roles were written for them and that they do it easily, we actually had to work through the difficulties in the acting.
So if among the audience there is some members of the Academy, please vote for them. I propose supporting actress for Milena, and best actress for Penelope, and also if there are some critic of any of association, I mean, all of them it fit as well. I mean, the New York Critics Circle, the LA, I mean, any kind of critic award will be very well received about these wonderful actresses.
We will get the word out. Penelope, it was almost like Pedro was talking as if you were not here this time. So I'm wondering if you wanted to add anything to this, what he was just saying about this particular role of Janis.
It's true that it was very challenging, and it's true that he was very wise in drying our own tears. He didn't want our tears, because it was very well written, and we would get emotional rehearsing the whole time, and he would let us go through that process, and even on the set, that would still happen, and he would many times shoot around those tears, shoot the moments right before and right after. And then what you get is a different kind of feeling when you watch it. It's like an adrenaline trip, I think, for when I can separate from what we did and watch it and just be part of the audience. Almost sometimes you feel like if you're watching a thriller, there is also a component of that is like an energy trip that happens because of the way he showed us around those moments of peaks of anxiety or a release of screaming or laughter or crying. He shoots around that. But those moments have to be there, but it's not the moments that he's editing, except the scenes where I confess and she has to react to something so major, and I have to be able to say the words that maybe are gonna mean that they're gonna take from me what I love the most. So in those moments are there, but the problem is that we would have been crying the entire film. So he was so, that's why he's such an incredible director, no? Because sometimes directors can feel tempted on the set, in the editing room, us also as actresses, actors, can feel tempted to transmit the emotions with that note, and it's not the most important one. For example, Janis is a woman that in her life cries much less than I cry. Anna cries less than Milena cries, I can guarantee you. We are very similar in that way. And I think it's very wise, for him to remind us, okay, that is yours, and that is not Janis, that is not Anna. Because there will always be a tendency, for actresses and actors to do that, I think.
They were crying all the time.
Okay, one final quick note, because we are out of time, but I feel like we have to talk about Milena, because you have an incredible track record, Pedro, of discovering actors and creating incredible roles for them. So if you can say a little bit about this discovery of Milena and her incredible performance in this film.
Well, it's for me or for her?
You can start.
I thought that it was a question for Milena. Really, I got that feeling, and for me, it was very clear. For example, to be a director, which is wonderful, being director, is just that you are the first witness of something that is happening for the first time in front of the camera. When it happens, a miracle, and they are great. And I remember very well when I worked with Antonio Banderas for the first time for him. I mean, because his debut, it was with me. And we were just rehearsing, just to make an audition, only just walking and looking to some place, the way, because I wanted just to see his glance and his eyes. And, since the very beginning, I knew that in that moment, and then it was 1981, that Antonio will become a big star. I didn't know in Hollywood, because that was, the first time for one Spanish actor. But, I got this is very specific feeling when you meet someone like that. And I have the same feeling when I met Milena during the rehearsals, and more when we were shooting. Because, she has no technique. She's too young. This is the second movie she does. And it's so much truth in the way she look at Penélope, the way of talking, the way of being mad or in love or friendship, or that I recognize that very well. But I recognize that also, that in Penelope, and even not with me, just when I saw her in her first movie, Jamón Jamón. I mean, I knew that, and that was very clear. And in Milena, I got also that feeling, and I hope, and I.
Okay, Milena, any last words from you about your experience working with Pedro?
Para mí esta experiencia ha sido probablemente uno de los regalos más bonitos que me ha dado la vida. Es mi segunda película, no tengo mucha formación como actriz, pero creo que este ha sido el mayor máster que podía hacer en mi vida.
So this is really one of the greatest gifts that life has given me. I don't have a big formation as an actress, but I think this is the best master class I could have ever taken.
All right, we're going to have to wrap it up, but I want to thank all of you for the film and for being with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for this beautiful audience. And don't forget to vote.
Thank